wait to be in conversation. I'm just going to put out a few framing ideas for you. On Fire came out a week ago, and so I've been talking to journalists, and I get these very strange questions these days, sort of aggressive questions about why I'm hopeful, as if there's something really wrong with me for that. And the truth is, I feel a range of different emotions on any given day. There's raw terror. There's a lot of that. There's grief. There's real grief for what we are already losing and what we will never get back. But I do admit that I do feel some hope. What I am saying in this book is not that I know we're going to win. I don't even say that our chances are good, to be honest with you. What I'm arguing is that we have a chance. We have a chance. We have a pathway. If we work incredibly hard, if we are truly on fire for the justice that we need, if all of those stars align, then we could win the kind of future that we tried to lay out in that film, which is not a perfect future, but it's a hell of a lot better, not just than some climate apocalypse that we can all imagine, but better than what a lot of people are living right now, right? And that is what this approach to our climate justice, to our climate crisis that centers justice is all about. So, what I think about most these days is really the weight of our historical moment, what it means for all of us to be alive and breathing in 2019. Now, you all know, I presume, the kind of timelines that we're up against. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change came out with this path-breaking report that got everybody's attention almost exactly a year ago. It was a report focused on what it would take to keep warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. And they highly recommended that we do that, considering what we're already seeing having warmed the planet by 1 degree Celsius. What they said is that we need to cut global emissions in half in 12 years. Now that was a year ago, so that means that we have just 11 years. And they were very clear, the scientists in this report, that this kind of emission reduction, to achieve that in just 11 years, is not something you can do with a single climate policy, with a single carbon tax or some other carbon pricing scheme. That plays a part in it, to be sure. But what they said was that this requires unprecedented transformation in every aspect of society. Climate scientists don't usually speak that directly, but they have learned that they're not going to get our attention unless they really spell things out for us. So, unprecedented transformation in buildings, agriculture, energy, transportation, and so on within this very short window. And when you hear, 11 years, 12 years, there's something like the mind wants to believe that we can start in 11 years. So it's always worth underlining that they say we have to have gotten it done in 11 years, right? The transformation done. And those are global targets, which means that in wealthy countries like the United States, which is the world's largest historical emitter of greenhouse gases, there we have to do more. We have to move faster to make some atmospheric space for the countries that have only just begun to emit carbon on an industrial scale. So if every ounce of our energy was focused on this kind of transformation of the bones of our society, it would be really hard to pull off. A truly epic task, but possible, they stress. But here's the part of our historical moment that is truly terrifying. That at this very moment, when we have this tight and unyielding deadline. The men who are rising to the highest office in country after country are not just failing to embrace this transformational agenda, not just failing to douse the flames of climate disruption, but they are active planetary arsonists. They are burning the planet with glee. Trump, and too many examples of his ravaging of environmental laws to mention here, his cracking open of public lands, oceans, the Arctic, to limitless drilling, his eyeing of Greenland for its oil and gas reserves beneath the melting ice. And then there's Bolsonaro, his buddy, who told the UN that the Amazon isn't actually burning. Not on fire at all. Business as usual. A lot of these buddies of Trump's are in the US right now for the UN General Assembly. There's Scott Morrison, another friend from Australia, Prime Minister of Australia. This guy, when he was Natural Resources Minister, came to Parliament with a huge hunk of coal and just caressed it and told people not to be afraid of it as a rationale for why he believed they should dig the world's largest coal mine, the Adani mine. And then there's Modi. Howdy Modi, right? He had the big rally. Also, an enthusiastic ravager of the natural world, Duterte, another one. These strong men are rising in this moment, and they have a sort of a common MO. If you look at what they're doing, if you look at the way they attack the press, and the way they use technology, the way they wage war on the very idea of objective truth, right? All of them have this formula of identifying an in-group in their countries, a circle of the protected, right? In this country, it's the MAGA crowd, it is the white, the wealthy, the so-called real Americans that are invoked. But for Modi, he has his in-group, the real Indians who are Hindu, not the Muslims, millions of whom are being stripped of citizenship, not people in Kashmir. The point is when you are inside the fire, as people are in the United States, we can think that it's only this country, but it isn't only this country. This is a global fire that is happening. And these tactics of defining the in and then the out groups, right? Inside the country and also on the border. So the other is the threat, right? The other is the terrorist, the disease, the invader. We have these two different kinds of fires. The climate disruptions, the very literal fires, and you know a lot about that here in Seattle because you've had a few summers in a row, not this past summer, but the one before that, where you were choked by smoke as we were in Canada across the border. In this book I write, I have a chapter called Summer of Smoke about that summer of 2017 when the sun was that little red dot in the sky and children with asthma were suffering and elderly people were suffering respiratory illnesses, and we started to think of our summers as seasons of smoke. So we have these very literal fires, and we have these political fires that are also raging out of control, that are also spreading hatred, supremacist logics from country to country. And I guess what I'm saying to you is it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that at this moment where the climate crisis moves from being this future threat that we talked about off in the distance to being something that we are living here. But of course, we have it relatively easy compared to people in Mozambique, the Bahamas, and Somalia. 7 million people were internally displaced in the first 6 months of 2019. People are already, millions and millions of people are on the move directly because of climate change, or because climate acts as an accelerant for armed conflict, another factor that is turning people against each other. I don't think it's a coincidence that as climate change becomes this lived reality, whether people claim to deny it or not, I don't believe that most people who claim they deny climate change really believe that our world isn't changing. I know Trump knows it's changing because he's had to modify his golf courses to deal with sea level rise. They just think they're going to be all right. So I don't think it's a coincidence that as the climate fires rage, these fires of hatred are also raging, and these strongman figures come to power promising to build walls, concentration camps, waging war on their political opponents. And all of this, as people are attacking each other, leaves them free to get on with that real business at hand, the plundering of the last protected wilderness on this planet, from the Amazon to the Arctic, which of course further fuels those planetary fires, the droughts and the superstorms and the floods, the fires that force millions to flee their arid lands, and which intensify armed conflict, which forces more people to move. And so they pour millions into their militaries, their walls, their prisons, their camps, and they take that money directly out of climate assistance, in the case of the Trump administration, cut millions of aid to Central America, much of which was going to help drought-struck farmers in Guatemala and Honduras, and moved it to this infrastructure of deportation and incarceration. These fires are connected. So I feel the weight of our historical moment. I feel it every minute of the day, but I do not feel hopeless. And that is because we do not live in a time of just 2 fires. We live in a time of 3 fires. There is a 3rd fire, and it is our fire. And we have to believe that. We really have to believe in it. We have to believe in it, and we have to not be afraid to unleash it. Because our fires are not the fires of destruction and annihilation. They are the fires of creation, of cleansing, of reparation. Our fires burn with love for the wonders of this planet and the people who live on it. Our fires are fiercely internationalist. We reject hate and the very idea that any human being can be illegal. Ours are the fires of the climate strikers, this global movement of children woven around the world, of young people standing up for each other. And on Monday, they organized the largest climate protest in the history of this planet, 4 million people on one day, and it's not over yet. Ours are the fires of the indigenous rights movements, putting bodies on the line, as they have always done, to stop new oil and gas pipelines on both sides of the border. Ours are the fires of the fossil fuel divestment movement, which just last week won one of its biggest victories when the University of California system announced that its $80 billion endowment combined portfolio was divesting from fossil fuels. And ours are the fires of the climate justice movement that worked for so long and so hard to lay the foundations for what is now called the Green New Deal. Ours are the fires of the Sunrise Movement, this young organization which takes its name from that ball of life-creating fire in the sky, that when the Democrats won the midterms, didn't waste time with congratulations and occupied the office of Nancy Pelosi and demanded a Green New Deal. completely redrawn. We have the majority of the contenders to lead the Democratic Party all pledging their allegiance to the Green New Deal, swearing not to take fossil fuel money, not all of them, but almost all of them. This is a huge shift in only a matter of months. Ours are also the fires of Amazon workers for climate justice. Extraordinary development, this movement that has taken on the richest man on the planet, the man who stole the name of our most critical rainforest to build a company based on cardboard boxes, and they have him on the run. Because of their pressure and their courage in joining the climate strike, Amazon vowed last week to have net zero carbon emissions by 2040, to power its facilities and operations with 100% renewable energy by 2030, and buy 100,000 electric delivery vans, which is pretty amazing. But to their enormous credit, the Amazon workers did not just say great. They said that's a nice start, went on strike anyway, and are pushing for not net zero, but actual zero emissions by 2030. And to get Amazon to not fund climate politicians who deny climate change, and not to do business with oil and gas companies. Flooding Seattle City Council elections with their dirty money. That would be awesome too. I called the book On Fire because that is what we need to be in this moment. We cannot be sort of in favor of beating these planetary arsonists. We have to be on fire with it. We cannot be sort of in favor of the Green New Deal. We have to be on fire for a Green New Deal. Monday's strikes were just the beginning. We need our fire to burn bright and hot enough to clear away all the debris standing in our way, standing in the way of our mission, which we must understand to be sacred. It needs to be hot enough to clear away the debris of the deniers, the ones who lie and confuse for money. It needs to be hot enough to clear away the debris of the distractors, getting us to focus on anything and everything but the fire. It needs to be hot enough to clear away the debris of the doomers, telling us it's all too late and why not just let it burn. Most of all, it needs to be hot enough to clear away the debris of the dividers, turning us against each other when we need to be more united, more powerful than we ever have been before. We do not have time to waver. We do not have time to wring our hands about how hard it is and how unlikely we are to win. We just have to tap into that superpower that kicks in when life is on the line and get it done. I'll leave you with the words of some of the climate strikers in the UK. They say, Greta was the spark, but we are the wildfire, and that's what we need to be. We have to be the wildfire. Thank you.